Today we're going to be grading our Chapter 9 quiz to start out our class. So make sure that you are keeping track of the number of points that we're going through and how much each is worth and how many that you earned. Now, as we're going through here, you will be able to see how I'm going to be grading the final test, which is also very helpful for you while we're getting ready for that final test. So let's go ahead and jump right into problem number 1. So problem number 1, we are looking at solving a diamond problem. So once again, we're looking for two numbers to multiply at the top and add or subtract to the bottom. So the only way you can multiply to get a 0 is by having one of those numbers as 0. And then 0 plus 7 makes 7. So 1 point for each of those. Now, when we have a 0 on the bottom, we're looking for two numbers that combine to be 0. So that means they need to be opposites of each other. So this top number up top is going to be a perfect square. So if we take the square root of 81, it's 9. So one of them is going to be 9, and the other one is going to be negative 9. So problem number 1 is worth 4 points. Once again, the order of those do not matter. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and factor. We're going to find the roots. So there's a couple ways that we can go ahead and take a look at this first one. One of the most efficient ways is you can see that both of those numbers, 64 and 36, can be reduced. So if we reduce them before it makes the problem itself a little bit easier to solve. So I see they're both divisible by 2. So I know I can take 2 out. When I take 2 out, I have 32 and 18. I can take 2 more out of both of those, and I would get 16 and 9. Okay. As I'm looking at, there's no other numbers. I've taken 2 and another 2 out, so it's 4. So this is going to change into 4 times the quantity, 16x squared minus 9. Okay, so at this point, we're going to pull out our A, our B, and our C. So our A is 16, our B is 0 because there's no x, and our C is negative 9. So we're going to go ahead and put that into our diamond problem. A times C goes on top. So we have 16 times negative 9. And that gives me negative 144, and there's just 0 down below. Now, this is very much like the one that we just did over here. So we are going to find two numbers that add or combine to 0 and multiply to negative 144. So that tells us that 144 is going to be a perfect square. So we go second square root of 144, and that, of course, is 12. So one is going to be 12. And my other one's going to be negative 12. Now we're going to go ahead and put this inside of our generic rectangle. I have a 16x squared in the bottom left. I have a negative 9 in our upper right. And I've split out my 0 into 12x and negative 12x. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and find the outsides. This way, I'm seeing that 12 is my biggest number, but it doesn't go into 16 evenly. So I can't take all 12 out. 2 times 6, I could take 2 out, but 6 doesn't go into both evenly. But I also have 3 times 4. So 4 I can take out of both of these. So I'm going to have a 4x going in this direction. Now, a 4x times another 4x gives me 16x squared. 4x times negative 3 gives me negative 12x. And 4x plus 3 gives me positive 12x. Now I'm going to go ahead and write this in product form. I have 4x minus 3 times 4x plus 3. Okay, so far you're going to get a point for your diamond problem, a point for your generic rectangle, a point for your product form. Now we're going to simply set both of those equal to 0 and solve for our roots, which is our last step. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And I get 4x is equal to 3 divide both sides by 4, and our first x is equal to 3/4 or 0.75. And then this one, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides. I get 4x equals -3. Divide both sides by 4, and my second root is -3/4 or -0.75. So 1 point for the diamond, 1 point for the generic rectangle, 1 point for product form, 1 point for each root, so that's points 4 and 5, and 1 point for showing any work. So A is going to be worth 6. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at B. This one is a more traditional problem. So we're going to jump right in. We can't reduce anything. So our A is 6, our B is -5, and our C is -4. We're going to go ahead and make a diamond problem. A times C is -24, and B goes on our bottom, -5. I'm looking for those factors now that multiply to be -24. I have 1 times 24, which adds to 25, subtracts to 23. I have 2 times 12, which adds to 14, subtracts to 10. I have 3 times 8, which adds to 11, subtracts to 5. So that's what I'm looking for, is my 3 and my 8. I need that to be a -5, so that's 3 minus 8. We're now going to put that inside of our generic rectangle. Our 6x squared goes in the bottom left. Our -4 goes in the upper right. And we've split up our -5x into -8x and 3x. Okay. Now we're going to solve the outsides. Here I can take a 3x out this way. That leaves a 2x going in this direction. 3x times 1 gives me 3x, and 2x times -4 gives me -8x. Now moving it to product form, I have 2x plus 1 times 3x minus 4. Okay, I am now going to use the zero product property to set them both equal to 0 and solve for my roots. So 2x plus 1 equals 0, and 3x minus 4 equals 0. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. 2x is equal to -1. Divide both sides by 2. And my first root is going to be -1/2. My next one here, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. 3x is equal to 4. Divide both sides by 3. And my second root is going to be 4/3. So once again, this one is going to be worth 6 points for letter B. So altogether, number 2 is going to be out of 12 points. 1 point for the diamond problem, 1 point for the generic rectangle, 1 point for product form, 1 point for each root, and 1 point for the root. Okay, problem number 3, we're finding the equation of the line that goes through these 2 points. So first we go ahead and write xy, xy, and we're going to find the slope first. The slope is subtracting the y's over subtracting the x's. So we're going to find that slope, and we're going to set up our subtraction problem. I'm going to start with my biggest y, which is this ordered pair. So I have 6 minus my other y, which is 2. I start with the same for my x's on the bottom, 1 minus 3. 6 minus 2 is 4, and 1 minus 3 is -2. 4 divided by -2 is -2. So 1 point for having a slope of -2. I'm now going to find my y-intercept. We're going to go ahead and write y equals mx plus b, and we're going to grab one of our points and our slope that we just found out and plug that in for y, m, and x, and then go ahead and solve for b. So my y is 6, my m is -2, my x is 1 plus b. 6, I'm going to move it over here, 6 is equal to -2 plus b. I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and b is equal to 8. So my y-intercept is 8. My final step is I'm going to write that all together. Y is equal to -2x plus 8. Okay, so 1 point for your slope, 1 point for your y-intercept, 1 point for having it correct, putting them in the correct spots, and 1 point for your work. So that is going to be 4 points for question number 3. Okay, this next one here, we're going to go ahead and use the quadratic formula to solve. So my A is 2, my B is -3, and my C is -9. So, of course, our quadratic formula is x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to go ahead and do that with our A, B, and C. X is equal to -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, as we're doing this, we are going to solve 2 problems on the inside underneath my square root. So the first one is always doing my square, and my second one is multiplying the 3 remaining numbers together. So we have -3 is 3, plus or minus the square root. -3 is -3 times -3, which is +9. And then we have -4. Remember to use your negative at the bottom of your calculator. -4 times 2 times -9 is +72, all divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Okay, we're going to continue solving that inside. 3 plus or minus the square root of 81, all divided by 4. Now the square root of 81 is 9, so we're going to split this into 2 problems. We have 3 plus 9, all divided by 4 for our first root, and we have 3 minus 9, all divided by 4 for our second root. 3 plus 9 is 12. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So our first root is 3. 3 minus 9 is -6, divided by 4 reduces to -3/2, or -1.5. Okay, so for this problem, you're going to get 1 point for having those correct setup, 1 point for getting it to this point, 1 point for each root, and a 5th point for your work. So that one's going to be about 5 out of 5 points. The next one's going to have any method. I'm going to use a generic rectangle diamond problem. So my A is 1, my B is -6, and my C is -7. A times C is -7, and B is -6. The only way to multiply to get a 7 is 1 times 7, and we want that to be a -6, so that's going to be 1 minus 7. We're going to go ahead and put that in our generic rectangle. We have our x squared in the bottom left, our -7 in the upper right, and we're breaking down our -6x into -7x and a plain x. The only way to get an x squared is x times x. X times 1 gives me x, and x times -7 gives me -7x. We write that in product form, x plus 1 times x minus 7. We're now going to use the zero product property to set both of them equal to 0 and solve. We're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and my first root is going to be -1. I'm going to add 7 to both sides, and my second root is going to be at +7. So we have 1 point for your diamond problem, 1 point for your generic rectangle, 1 point for product form, 1 point for each root, and a last point for your work. So that makes B out of 6, which makes number 4 out of 11 all together, out of 11. Okay, so that's kind of our review little section, and now we're working on those items that we have been working on this chapter for inequalities. So our first piece of information to graph this is we need to know the slope, and we need to know, in addition to your slope, your y-intercept. So our y-intercept in this case is -1. And so we're going to go ahead and make a dot at -1 on our graph. We're now going to focus on the slope, and our slope is -1/2. So from that point, we're going to go down 1 and 2 to the right. So down 1, 2 to the right, down 1, 2 to the right, down 1, 2 to the right, down 1, 2 to the right. We reverse direction up 1, 2 to the left, up 1, 2 to the left, up 1, 2 to the left, up 1, 2 to the left. I now analyze my inequality. It is a greater than, so that tells me it is going to be a dashed line. And we are going to shade that above. So we have a dashed line, and we are going to shade it above. Once again, don't scribble. What a nice shaded graph. Okay, so you get 1 point for your y-intercept, 1 point for moving your slope, 1 point for a dashed line, and a 4th point for shading above. So A is out of 4. Okay, let's go ahead and look at B here. Once again, are going to take our slope and our y-intercept. Our slope is positive 3, so we're going to put a dot at 3. Our y-intercept, of course, was that positive 3. That's our B. And our slope is negative 1. Now we need to turn that into a fraction, so we write negative 1 over 1, which means we're going to go down 1 and 1 to the right. So we're going to go down 1 and 1 to the right. And then, of course, we're going to go the other direction, which is up 1 and 1 to the left. Okay, we're now going to look at that inequality. It is a less than equal to. The equal to portion tells me to go ahead and make a solid line, arrows on both ends, and less than tells me I'm going to be shading below. So less than tells me that I'm going to be shading below. Okay, this one as well is going to be worth those same 4 points. 1 for your slope, 1 for your y-intercept, 1 for a solid line, and your 4th point for shading below. Okay, so in total, that number 5 is going to be out of 8. Okay, this is the first half of our quiz. Let's see how many we have all together for that first page. We have 4 plus 12 plus 4 plus 11 plus 8. So our first page is going to be out of 39 points. So go ahead and tally up how many you got on the front half of our quiz. Okay, so 39 possible points on the front. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and move on to the back. Once again, we're continuing with our inequalities. Now we're moving on to systems of inequalities where we're going to graph 2. So let's look at this first one. Our first one here, we have a slope of 1. Our m is 1 in front of the x. So that's going to be 1 over 1. And we have our y-intercept for this problem of 1 as well. So we're going to go ahead and plot our 1. And then we're going to go up 1 and 1 to the right. Okay. I like to reverse those, go down 1 and 1 to the left, continue my line. I then look at my inequality. It is less than equal to. So I'm going to draw a solid line, arrows on both ends, and less than tells me I'm going to shade below. So you get 4 points for that part, 1 for your y-intercept, 1 for your slope, 1 for your solid line in the right spot, and 1 for shading below. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and look at the second one. Our second one has a y-intercept of negative 1. So we're going to make a dot there. And it has a slope of 2/3. So we're going to go up 2 and 3 to the right from that y-intercept. Up 2, 3 to the right. Up 2, 3 to the right. Down 2, 3 to the left. Down 2, 3 to the left. Okay. We are going to look at our inequality It is a dashed line. Arrows on both ends. And we are going to be shading above because it is a greater than. So 4 points for this one as well. And then your 5th point is going to be for kind of making darker here your solution, which is that double shaded area. Now remember, it includes everything on the solid line, and it does not include anything on the dashed line. The dashed line will make them not true. Okay, so there is 9 points for letter A. Okay, B, we're going to start out with our line. We have a y-intercept of 4. And we have a slope of positive 1. So once again, that's going to be 1 over 1. So we're going to go up 1 and 1 to the right. So we're going to point at 4. And then we're going to go up 1 and 1 to the right. And down 1 and 1 to the left. Okay, it is a greater than. So we are going to do a dashed line. Make sure you're using your ruler or you will lose a point. And greater than means we are going to be shading above. So 4 points for that inequality. Now, as you can tell, our second one here is a parabola. So we have for our parabola an a of 1, a b of 2, and a c of negative 3. A times c makes a negative 3 up top and a 2 down below. The only way to multiply to get a 3 is 3 times 1, and we need a 2, so that's going to be 3 minus 1. We're going to put that into our generic rectangle, and we have a x squared in the bottom left, a negative 3 in the upper right, and we've broken up our 2x into a 3x and a negative x. We're going to find our outsides. The only way to get an x squared is x times x. X times negative 1 gives us negative x, and x times 3 gives us 3x. We're now putting it in product form, x minus 1 times x plus 3. And we're going to set each of them equal to 0 and find our 2 roots. We're going to add 1 to both sides, and that gives us a first root of 1. And then we're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and our second root is going to be at negative 3. So we have a positive 1, and a negative 3. 1, 2, 3, right here. Okay, ignore that middle point for right now. That middle point, however, is going to be where our vertex is. So a couple ways we can do our vertex. We can add those together and divide by 2, which tells us the x value of our vertex is negative 1. The other way that I could do it is negative b over 2a, or I can just find the middle. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my product form or my original equation to find out what the y value of my vertex is. So I have negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2, and negative 1 plus 3 is positive 2. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. So my vertex is going to be at negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I look at my inequality, and my inequality is a less than greater to, less than equal to, and I also can plot my negative 3 of my y axis. And then I'm going to make my smooth curve with a solid line, and it's going to be less than, which is actually going to be on the outside. However, I'm going to verify with 0.00. I'm asking myself, is 0 less than 0 plus 0 minus 3, negative 3? And the answer is no. So that means that that middle portion should not be shaded. So we're going to go ahead and shade the outside of my parabola. And this gives us kind of an interesting solution area that's double shaded. And I'm going to highlight that doubled area. It's this area over here. And this little tiny area right here. Of course, that continues up and forever and is going to get larger as we go. So lots of points on this one. We have, for our line itself, 1 point for your y-intercept, 1 point for your slope, 1 point for your dashed line, and 1 point for shading above. So that's 4 for the line. For the parabola, we have 1 point for your diamond problem, 1 point for your generic rectangle, 1 point for your product form, 1 point for each root, 1 point for your x of your vertex, 1 point for your y of your vertex, and 1 point for your solid line, and 1 point for shading on the outside. So that giant guy is worth 13 points, which means problem number 6 is worth 22 altogether. Okay, number 7, we are working the other direction. We have a graph and we're going ahead and we are finding from that graph the equation and the inequality. So I'm looking for my y-intercept. My b is 2, that's 1 point. I'm finding my next good point on my line, which is right here. And I see to get there, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a -5 for my slope for my numerator. And I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope is -5/4. I see it's a solid line shaded above. So that's going to be a greater than equal to for your third point. Your fourth point is for putting your equation all together. Y is greater than or equal to -5/4 x plus 2. Okay, so once again, 1, 2, 3, 4 points for problem A. Now, for problem B, we had a warm-up like this that we worked on Friday. So we're looking for our x-intercepts, which is in y is 0. And then we are going to write that in product form. So 1 point for knowing that those are your roots. So we have a root of -2 and a root of +2. We are then going to do the opposite of those roots for product form. That is your second point. And then we're going to multiply the outsides of a generic rectangle. X plus 2, x minus 2. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. X times -2 is -2x. And -2 times 2 is -4. We're going to finish up by writing our parabola. And that is going to be y is equal to x squared. 2x minus 2x is nothing. They cancel out. Minus 4. Okay, so 1 point for pulling out your roots. Second point for product form. Third point for the outside of a generic rectangle. And the fourth point for getting that final answer correct. So that one is worth 4 as well, which means problem 7 is going to be out of 8. Okay, number 8 here, and once again, we've had lots of warm-ups with this. We're writing the inequality. So we have our x, and it's going to the left, so that's less than. It's an open circle, so we keep it as a less than, and then we write our boundary point there, which is 1. Okay, so this is worth 2 points, 1 for the correct sign, and 1 point for the correct boundary point. Now for this one, we know that our x is between two numbers, so we're going to put a less than on either side. The 2 is solid on the right, so we're going to put an equal sign on the right, and then we're going to write our boundary points. There's a -4 on the left, and there's a +2 on the right. So 1 point for the -4, 1 point for the less than, a third point for the less than equal to, and a fourth point for the 2. So this one is out of 4, this one is out of 2, so problem 8 is out of 6. Okay, our last problem on the test is simply solving for x and then graphing it. So we're going to go ahead and distribute. So x is less than or equal to 2x minus 2 minus 2x. 2x minus 2x cancels out. So we have x is less than or equal to -2. We're going to go ahead and make our number line. And we are going to have a closed circle because of our less than equal to at -2. Less than is to the left. And then we're going to go ahead and connect those two. So you have 1 point for getting to x is less than or equal to -2, 1 point for your closed circle, and 1 point for going to the left, and 1 point for your work. So this one's out of 4 points. Okay, so on the backhand side here, we have 30, 40 points. Go ahead and tally those up. 40 plus 39 is 79 points for your Chapter 9 quiz. And once again, as you are tallying those up, you're going to go ahead and type me and put into your into the chat how many you got correct out of 79 points. And I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes, and then you're going to go ahead and show me your corrected and your corrections on your exam. Okay, I hope this helps you prepare for the Chapter 9 test, which is worth 40% of your grade, as opposed to the quiz, which is only worth 5% of your grade.